As Montreal prepares to celebrate the 375th anniversary of its founding, Mountain Lake PBS is proud to present the 5-part film series, Montréal, Mon Amour, Mon Histoire. Each film explores aspects of a given historic area of the city, from the old port of Montreal to the industrial east side of the city, from Mount Royal to the Street of Immigrants, Saint Laurent Boulevard, and of course, downtown Montreal. When you support Mountain Lake PBS with a one-time contribution of $75, we'll thank you with either the DVD or Blu-ray of The River and Its Island. The DVD and Blu-ray contain both the English and French versions of the film. With a generous one-time contribution of $180, we'll thank you with the complete 5-film box set of Montréal, Mon Amour, Mon Histoire on either DVD or Blu-ray. Along with The River and Its Island, the set contains the films Maisonneuve, Cradle of Industry, Around the Mountain, La Main, Street of Immigrants, and Downtown, The Age of Lights. The box set contains both the English and French versions of the films. Celebrate Montreal's 375th anniversary with a gift to yourself and your community when you become a supporter of Mountain Lake PBS. Call or go online to mountainlake.org right now. Thank you.
I absolutely love the photography in this film. It is so beautiful. I am Jennifer Kowalczyk here with Mountain Lake PBS, and I am joined by Ronit Yaroski of the Canadian Friends of Mountain Lake PBS. Thank you for being with us, and thank you, Ronit, for coming down to make the trip to see us.
Well, we're so excited, and I'm so excited to be here. This film is absolutely amazing. Really brings to life the history of Montreal. I live in Montreal, je suis Montréalaise, and I'm so proud to have this incredible 375th anniversary coming up. I'm so proud and excited to have you as part of it joining us today.
And don't go anywhere. We're just taking a quick break to remind you how important your support is to Mountain Lake PBS. But we're here tonight to ask you for that support and also to let you know that there are some wonderful community members that are going to be interviewed, and we're very lucky as well to have the filmmaker Paul Carvalho with us as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll be talking with those people in just a few minutes. But really quickly, we just wanted to remind you that we cannot be a local PBS station without your support.
That's right. And we are so excited and so pleased that so many of our Canadian friends up in Canada and Quebec are here and supporting us. And si vous voulez téléphoner en français, si vous êtes plus à l'aise en français, s'il vous plaît, téléphonez en français. Le DVD est également disponible en français.
Again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Give us a shout at the number on your screen, or you can also make a donation online. We are very lucky to be joined by a bunch of board members and friends of the station here that are ready to take your calls. I believe we even have a few French phoners that are available to take calls with you as well. So get on the phone, give us a shout, and let us know that you value this type of programming, not just the masterpiece in Downton Abbey that you appreciate, but local stories like this one. So please give us a shout. Right now, we actually are joined by Paul Carvalho and Tom Halleck in the studio. Tom?
Thank you, Jen and Ronit. It is a pleasure indeed to have Paul Carvalho here with us tonight for the entire evening to talk about your wonderful film. Montreal is getting ready to celebrate its 375th birthday coming up in the next year. Is that why you produced this documentary? Was this to tie into the 375th?
Absolutely. This is why they accepted my pitch to make 5 films in the history of Montreal. Normally it would have been a little more difficult, but knowing that this huge anniversary was coming up, they said we better have something ready when the time comes. And it took 7 years of my life to finish these films. The 7th year was to translate it, narrate the films in my own voice, and sell them to Mountain Lake PBS.
How do you go about producing a film like this? Is there just a wealth of documentation, or did you really have to go hunt for the history of the city?
Well, it's a process. You read everything that you can about a certain part of the city, let's say the old part of the city, Le Vieux Montréal. And you come up with a list of things that seem obvious to you. And then you have a discussion with the historians who really know the history of the city. And they say, yeah, yes for this, no for that, that's nonsense.
So you tap into their expertise.
Absolutely. And then after that, you have to start looking for the photos that are going to make it illustrate this. And some of those photos are incredibly easy to get because you have wonderful museums like the McCord Museum that has a wealth of beautiful images that you can rely on. And others are incredibly hard to get. And some even come from people's drawers. I remember for one photo in one of the documentaries coming up, I had this relationship with this woman from the Chinese community for a year and a half, until she finally showed up on my door with 3 photos from the community. And that was a victory.
You were waiting just for those photos.
Yes.
Part of the story of Montreal, of course, is the beginning, is New France. And so to trace the history of Montreal, you have to follow the roots back to France, which you did.
We did. I was incredibly fortunate there in finding this woman living in Montreal who was from Langres, the little city that Jeanne Mance came from. And she had done her own documentary about it, and she was willing to help me. So she went to Langres, she made she shot what I asked her to shoot for me, and we met in Paris, and that's how we got into the Mazarine, La Bibliothèque Mazarine, the first public library in the history of France, and we shot the very book, the handwritten book, that is the first history of Montreal. That was an incredibly moving moment for me to see that book in my hands.
I can imagine. The 2 founders, de Maisonneuve and Jeanne Mance, what brought them here? What was their mission?
It was a religious mission. It was not to trade. It was not to profit from or to benefit from the Indians in any way. It was a mission of conversion. Europe has intermittently gone through moments of great piety, a great religious inspiration, and this was one of those moments when it was thought that bringing the word of God, of our Christian God, to the natives is the best thing we can possibly do. But of course they arrived here and they very quickly saw that to remain here they had to come into a commercial relationship with the natives that would be beneficial to all sides. And one has to remember that, as the film says, for the first century, for the first 100 years, there were more natives on the island of Montreal than there were Frenchmen. So you had to have a good relationship, and the natives had things that we needed, and they had things, that was mutually beneficial. When I say we, well, I'm certainly not, of French origin.
Right. And they knew that the Iroquois were there. They knew what to expect because Jacques Cartier had been there a century before their trip to set up their colony.
When they crossed the Atlantic, they stopped in Quebec City. And the people in Quebec City were well informed about how dangerous Montreal was, because it's a strategic island, right, through which you can have access to the interior of the continent. So the natives really wanted to protect that. The Iroquois considered it their island. So de Maisonneuve and Jeanne Mance were told, "Vous pouvez pas y aller. C'est une folle aventure," which means it's a crazy adventure to go down to Montreal. And as history has it, de Maisonneuve, who had been really a warrior, a soldier from the age of 13, said, even if every tree on the island of Montreal becomes an Iroquois warrior, I am going down. And it wasn't easy.
It wasn't, and to navigate the St. Lawrence River, to navigate the Lachine Rapids, as we saw at the beginning of the film, still today, wild rapids.
Yes.
Was that why they chose where they did to establish their colony, Fort Ville-Marie?
You couldn't go through the rapids. So you necessarily had to get to what is now the old port of Montreal, bring down all the merchandise, and then go around to what is now the city of Lachine, which is beyond the rapids, that put everything on a ship there and move then the goods to the interior of North America.
So that made sense for them to stop there. They couldn't go any further.
It made sense. It's what made Montreal one of the great port cities of North America, as opposed to any old little city.
That's right.
By the river.
And we're going to talk a lot more about that coming up tonight. Paul, wonderful to have you here. We'll be
pleasure.
back with you in just a few. Bill, let's send it over to you now. Bill McCogan.
And our thanks to filmmaker Paul Carvalho for being in our studio this evening to talk about this wonderful film. And our thanks to you for watching this, our television premiere of The River and Its Island, the first of a 5-part documentary series that we are proud to be presenting here at Mountain Lake PBS. You know, Mountain Lake PBS has a very special and very important mission. And that mission is to inspire and enrich people and our communities through this kind of meaningful storytelling, through entertainment, through education, and really through public engagement. And none of this is possible without your support. We need your support. So please pick up the phone, call that number on your screen right now. We have some wonderful gifts as a thank you for your donation and for becoming a member of Mountain Lake PBS. You know, this kind of educational programming is right in our mission. We are celebrating the cultural history of such a very important part of our viewership region here in Montreal. This film takes an exploration into the history that shaped that wonderful series, and we hope that you're enjoying this, the first part, and that you will continue to enjoy the subsequent editions of Montreal, Mon Amour, Mon Histoire, which we will be presenting over the course of the next several months. For right now, I'm going to throw it over to Paul Larson and Geneviève Roy, our Montreal-based blogger on mountainlake.org. We hope some of you have checked out her work, to talk about Montreal, the cultural center, and what this kind of programming can mean to our relationship with that wonderful city. Paul?
Thanks so much, Bill. Geneviève Roy is such a good friend to Mountain Lake PBS, and she is the interpreter for the English Montreal School Board, and she also happens to be a classical violinist, which really plugs her into the arts community. You know, in this show, we are talking about your city.
Yes.
You were born and raised in Montreal.
That's right.
Now, this documentary, it's telling the story of your city with its photographs and with its reenactments. Why do you think that's a wonderful thing?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? I was looking at the documentary. The visual quality, the cinematography is stunning. It really represents Montrealers, where we come from, where we're going. And I think it's so important to know your past to be able to build your future. That's what I think.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you so much for coming down from Montreal to be with us.
Thank you for having me.
And you're with us all the time, actually, because you do this wonderful blog.
That's right.
And I was reading about the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, the new
yes.
pavilion. You were talking about the Nutcracker Market
That's
recently.
right.
So what do you think of this documentary that's taking us all the way back to the days of the settlers and bringing us up to the world that you live in, the exciting cultural world of Montreal of today? What do you think of that?
Montreal is such a hub for culture, for history, for new immigrants, for different ethnic diversity, culture backgrounds. I mean, when I do study for my Montreal blog, I have to really research what is new and upcoming, what's interesting. And I think that's the same question that the first settlers were asking themselves. What are we going to find when we arrive in this new land? So I think it's the same type of process that people are going through. What are we going to find there? How are we going to live it? Where are we going to go in the future? We were talking about the Nutcracker Market, which is a really wonderful, how can I say, it's an open market where you can get all kinds of products for the holidays. And also, like when you go to the Pavilion for Peace at the Montreal Art Museum, all the art pieces that are there are curated from times past. So it's your history, it's who you are, and also people will get inspired to build new pieces of art for the future. So it's important to curate new ideas, new different products, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely, and the filmmaker used many things that he learned in Montreal museums in the creation of this film. I understand you have some history with Pointe-à-Calière.
Yes, I worked there as a guide and also at the welcome booth during the Japanese exhibition, the Jomon and the Kumon culture. And I was really impressed by how the museum has managed to preserve such important relics of our past. If you go there, I really highly suggest you do. It's a wonderful museum. You learn a lot about Montreal's history there.
Absolutely, and we're learning a lot about Montreal today from your blog. Why do you enjoy doing the blog so much?
Because I'm always looking for something new and interesting to do. I'm an avid traveler, so are you, from what I've heard. And as a tourist, a regular tourist, I'm always trying to figure out, okay, there is the regular things you can do around a city, but what are those special, unique activities that you can take your family and friends and really engulf yourself in Montreal culture? So that's what I try and promote through my blog. I try to get all those interesting cultural event, food, travel, entertainment activities that are upcoming that will inspire people, things you can do with everybody, and really immerse yourself in Montreal French-English culture.
And your blog is very inspiring.
Thank you.
So what I'm wondering is, you're a very active member of Mountain Lake PBS. Why do you think it's important to support what we're doing at Mountain Lake PBS?
Oh, I think public television is a real jewel for education purpose, for community purpose. It's something we have to protect, something we have to encourage. I think public television is a gem and we have to protect it. I grew up watching Mountain Lake PBS. I watched Sesame Street. I watched Downton Abbey. I'm looking forward to the Victoria television series that is coming up. I think it's a part that's ingrained in your life since birth through all different steps of your life. And I think PBS is just it's a company that just touches you. It doesn't matter. You can share your stories, and you can also it's part of who we are. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Hey, I'm looking forward to watching the rest of the film tonight.
All right.
But before we go back, we're going to speak with Jen and Ronit.
Thank you, Genevieve, and thank you, Paul. We are so lucky to have Genevieve up in Montreal. We couldn't be more grateful for her help and support. It's wonderful to have feet up on the ground, and just like you, Ronit, welcome to our team, by the way. We're a small team here at Mountain Lake PBS, and it simply would not be possible for us to be as engaged with the community as we are without having sort of volunteers, like our wonderful volunteers that are here taking your calls right now. Without your support, none of this would be possible.
Absolutely, and I want to pick up on what Genevieve said about community impact and engaging with the community. And we're working really hard in Montreal and in Quebec to be present and to be really your PBS station in Canada, your #1 PBS station in Canada. And 60% of our supporters are in Quebec and in Canada, so bravo, votre appui est vraiment, vraiment précieux pour nous autres.
It's true, and even just a few things recently that I can think of. We were at Montreal's KidCon. We were at the Montreal Art Center for the Autumn Art Fair. So we are really trying to engage as thoroughly as we can up in the Montreal community. And again, it's not possible without your help. Thank you to all of our supporters that are out there in Montreal. Thank you to all of you who have called in so far.
Absolutely.
It's wonderful to hear the phones ringing. So thank you, thank you, thank you. As a reminder, at $75, when you make your donation tonight, you can receive the DVD or the Blu-ray of The River and Its Island. The great thing about this is that on those discs, it's available in both English and in French. At the $180 donation level, a very generous donation for us here at Mountain Lake PBS, you can receive the complete five-film box set of the entire series, which of course you're only seeing the first documentary tonight. So give us a call the number on your screen, or visit us at mountainlake.org. Your support could not be more important to us.
And I just want to repeat in French pour nos amis en Québec qui veulent parler en français. Donc pour $75, ça nous fera plaisir de vous envoyer le DVD ou le Blu-ray de cet film, Le Fleuve et son île. Et pour $180, vous recevrez le set complet de tous les 5 films en DVD ou Blu-ray. Et évidemment, vous pouvez les voir en français ou en anglais.
Again, give us a call at the number on your screen, or visit us at mountainlake.org and make the decision to become an active member of Mountain Lake PBS. Right now, we're very lucky to be joined by Paul Carvalho and Tom Halleck.
Thanks a lot, Jen and Ronit. We are so pleased to have you here with us tonight. We're talking about how Montreal became Montreal, the first fort that was built in 1642 as they traveled up the St. Lawrence River, and that was New France at the time. How were those first years? How difficult of a life was it for this new colony?
It was immensely difficult. There were sporadic attacks from the Iroquois, which intensified over time, to the point that, as you see in the film, Jeanne Mance had to say, well, there's money in France for a hospital we're going to build here, but what's the point of having a hospital if we're not going to have a city? That's how bad it looked at the time. Right. So they decided that they would instead send de Maisonneuve over to France, that he would recruit 100 colonists who knew how to shoot, and he would bring them over to strengthen the colony. And that was not even enough. A regiment was sent afterwards to turn the situation around. And that produced a kind of stalemate that eventually led to the peace of 1701. It was quite a process to get to that great peace, but it was good for all the communities.
So the Iroquois and the colonists were able to establish an understanding. There was the treaty that they signed. There were a few decades there, and then the rule changed, as we saw as we'll be seeing in the next section of the mid 1700s. That's when Britain conquered Canada and.
Correct. From the moment that Britain conquered Canada, of course, that opened the door to for all of Great Britain's people to come to Montreal, and it was starting in the 1820s. They came in such great numbers that for about 30 years or so, the British, people of British descent, or people born in Great Britain, outnumbered the local people who had been born here from French descent. And the city exploded in growth in the process in just a few decades. So you have the Irish coming in, and you have the Scots who come in, who are the great tradesmen, who are highly educated for the time, and very accomplished. It wasn't just a matter of literacy, but also numeracy. The Scots were often called the accountants of the British Empire.
And as we'll see in this second part, a lot of them became the entrepreneurs who really helped the city grow and build.
Are responsible for the development of the port, of course, and the great fortunes that led to the creation of the square mile, where all the great homes of the British people of Montreal were.
So the really wealthy lived in this area known as the Golden Square Mile.
Correct.
And this was Sherbrooke and University and René Lévesque in that area.
Correct.
That was where all these mansions and fantastic homes were.
Yes. And I remember coming to Montreal some 40 years ago, and at some point I lived in an apartment building that overlooked the Square Mile, and I heard this expression, the Square Mile, which became the Golden Square Mile later on. And I said, well, what is it? It was my first exposure to the fact that these mansions, you could still see quite a few, were set up by these incredibly wealthy people who controlled a great part of the wealth that existed in Canada in general. And so I began with an immigrant's curiosity about what there was. And that curiosity was only partially satisfied by being a daily news reporter for the CBC. Mm-hmm. And every time I went to a place that had some historical significance, I wanted to know more. And that's how we get to my somehow miraculously enjoying the history of Montreal in French and now in English, for our audiences in Canada and in the United States.
World premiere here in the United States. Very good. Thank you, Paul. We will be back with you in just a few minutes. But right now, let's send it over to Paul and Genevieve.
Genevieve, this film series is nicely coinciding with the 375th birthday of Montreal that we're going to be celebrating in 2017. How is watching this film a great way to celebrate the birthday?
Well, let me put it to a question to you. Imagine you received a birthday invitation that the entire city is being invited to. Wouldn't you want to know whose birthday you're celebrating? So I think this documentary is a wonderful starting point. I mean, it's well researched, there's beautiful reenactments in this film. And I think it's a good way to know a little bit about why Montreal is getting so excited to celebrate this upcoming birthday, which is a major event for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I am getting excited, and it's so much fun learning about Montreal with this beautiful film. How personally are you going to celebrate the 375th birthday?
Well, Montreal is a city, there's activities for everybody. I'm going to be out there partying like crazy at all the different cultural events.
I imagine you'll be blogging about them too.
Oh, I will, definitely I will.
All right, well, right now we're going to go back to the film, the first part of Montréal, Mon Amour, Mon Histoire.